virtual sheet music. My name is Joseph Mendoes, and I am a cello teacher in the Los Angeles area and a faculty member of the Colburn School of Performing Arts in downtown Los Angeles. Today I'm going to be presenting to you a video on some of the technical and musical issues related to playing Bach. I know many of you have a lot of questions regarding this, especially the first suite, the Prelude being so popular, and of course we hear it in so many car commercials and things like that. So this is something that of course everyone wants to play, and understandably it's a great piece of music. But there are some very specific technical problems we first have to deal with in order to really approach Bach and to be able to play Bach as freely and as musically as we would want to. So the first thing I'd like to discuss is actually string crossings. Now, string crossings are always an issue, whether we're playing Bach or whether we're playing a Dotauer etude or a Popper etude or something like that. We always have to deal with string crossings and multiple string crossings over and over and over again, and negotiating those can be challenging. But the first suite actually presents difficulties with string crossings right in the very first three notes. Now these three notes also are the same three notes in the beginning of the minuet of the first suite. Now I recommend that before you study the prelude of the first suite, you should study the minuet actually of that same suite. It gives you a little bit of a better primer in the kinds of techniques that you're going to need in order to perform the first prelude successfully. So let's start with this idea of string crossings. Now, the primary issue is how to do these smoothly. Now, most people, when they first approach these, they think of the three strings, or the four strings for that matter, but in this case the three, the G string, the D string, and the A string, as having three separate levels that we have to hit. Now this can cause this kind of sound, where we have three distinct levels, and then kind of a slap when we do the string crossing. Now musically this is not desirable. So we have to envision something else in order to do these string crossings more efficiently and more musically. The thing we have to envision is a constant curve. Now, one of my teachers, Dr. Richard Nail, gave me this very interesting idea in order to achieve this. He actually, in his teaching studio, he has a hula hoop. And he has you take your hand at the bottom of the hula hoop, he holds it up like this. And unfortunately, I don't have one in my studio. But he has you draw your hand back and forth like this on the bottom part of the hula hoop. And if you could kind of mimic this motion. Now this is an extreme exaggeration of what we're going to be doing in a minute, but it's still a good motion to try to mimic in order to try to understand what this really entails here in order to do these string crossings well. Now, to do the string crossings well, you see, you have to really feel the entire curve this way, all the way to the A string, and you can see my hand doing that. And this is a constant issue, especially in the prelude, of course. You know, in order to do all those string crossings very smoothly, we have to really be exploring all of the distance between the strings and to try to do it as smoothly as possible, and never thinking of individual levels, but all the levels in between the strings. So this problem of string crossing, it happens, of course, all throughout the first prelude. This is why I really recommend that you start off with the minuet to really handle these string crossings much better. I think this is a much better plan. Then when you go to the prelude, you'll find that there are certain things that you don't have to work on too hard if you really are feeling this curve with the string crossings. So the next thing that's a very common problem in all of Bach, but especially in this first suite, has to do with intonation. And there are many ways, of course, to practice intonation, your scales and your practicing thirds and sixths and octaves and these kinds of things are very helpful. However, something that you can do that can directly address a problem, for example, in the first suite of Bach and in all the suites of Bach, is to get used to playing with a drone. Now, by a drone, I mean a constant pitch of some sort. Now, there are various gadgets that can give you this drone. For example, I have one of these Boss Dr. Beat metronomes here on the ground right next to me. It can play any pitch and hold that pitch. However, with Bach, you don't necessarily always need that. You have a drone in an open string, especially in the G major, the first suite. So, for example, in the first three notes again, you can check your B and really get it in tune, so that I'm still adjusting mine here. And you can do this on many notes. For example, whenever you have an F sharp on the D string, you can test it against your A. Whenever you have an E on the D string, you can test it against your G. And there's many cases in the first suite where you can do this. Or you can set your metronome to a G and have it play that G for you, and then play the whole opening against that G to make sure that it's all really in tune. And once you've done this, then it's critical that the next step is that you turn off the drone, and that you really get used to hearing the purity of the ring. There should be a nice, wonderful ring on every single note that you play. If you achieve this, that means you're really getting really, really fine intonation. If there's a dullness or a lack of resonance, sometimes this is due to the note not being completely and totally centered on the pitch. So this is important to do when you're practicing, which of course takes tremendous amounts of concentration and listening. The next thing is, one more thing in regards to intonation. There's much discussion about expressive intonation. I don't know how many of you have heard of this idea, but there's much discussion of expressive intonation versus just or tempered, not just, but tempered intonation. This is a difficult question because this really depends upon how you hear things. For example, if you learned piano before you learned cello, you can get used to tempered intonation because, of course, the piano is tuned, with even half steps. And this is a little bit of a different intonation than the intonation that we can use, that also singers can use, where we can slightly adjust things. For example, we can make the 7th degree of a scale a little higher to kind of heighten the tension going back towards the tonic. There's various things like this that we can do. I think in this case you have to follow your own ear, and you have to say, okay, well, when I'm playing Bach, it has to be in tune. Now, what does in tune mean? Well, you're going to have to listen for that pure ring again, and see what that tells you about how to play in tune. This discussion can get us into trouble, because if we start focusing too much on playing expressive intonation, we can actually start playing out of tune, too much out of tune. However, if we focus too much on playing tempered intonation, things can sound a bit dull. We can lose that ring, that special ring that occurs when we play really well in tune. So as far as that goes, don't worry about it too much. Just try to use your ear as best you can, and when it sounds really in tune, that means it's in tune, and you can trust that. And sometimes that may mean that you're using a little bit of expressive intonation. Sometimes that may mean you're using a little bit of tempered intonation, but you have to just trust your ear. And of course, if you have a teacher, trust your teacher's advice as well. The last thing I want to discuss is style concerns. You can go on YouTube and you can find a ton of videos of different cellists playing Bach, from Casals. There's actually a video of this, I believe it's the first suite, of him playing it when he's a little bit more of an advanced age. There's a video of Rostropovich, There's, of course, recordings of the great French cellists Fournier and Gendron and Paul Tourtellier and all the wonderful traditions of the French tradition of cello playing. And you have many, many different approaches. And, of course, then you have the historical approach, which uses, uncovered gut strings and a bow that of course, bends outwards this way instead of inwards like the modern bow. And players that play with no vibrato and players that play with a lot of vibrato. And this is what I would recommend. It really depends on what level you're at. If you're at a fairly high level, then thinking about a historical approach can be good. It can be something that can help your view of Bach and help you play Bach more from the heart and in a more direct manner. However, if you're of a more intermediate level, I recommend that you play Bach with a full tone and with vibrato and not worrying so much about playing with ornamentation or anything like that, but to really have, play Bach so that it helps your technique. And then you can worry more later about how you're going to play it musically. So focus a lot on developing a very, very full sound and absolutely flawless centered intonation and all those things first before you really start to worry too much about style. And that should help to clarify that. Recordings that I love myself, Pierre Fournier was an extraordinary artist. His Bach playing is terrific. I really Yo-Yo Ma's first recording, the one from the 1980s, is sensational, I think. Rostropovich's recordings from the 90s are quite good. There's some things that are a little bit eccentric about them, but the cello playing itself is very fabulous. And for some really interesting Bach, you can try listening to the great modern Hungarian cellist Miklós Perényi. His entire Bach suites, actually, someone recently uploaded on YouTube, so you can enjoy that as well. I hope this video has been helpful for you, so that you can start to approach Bach with fearlessness. So yes, I hope I hope you enjoy Bach in the future. And if you have any questions or comments, please feel free to leave them in the comment section on the webpage, and I'll be happy to answer any of your questions that you may have. Thank you very much.